Hi, I'm Amy, and today it is all about newspapers because newspapers are so amazing. They tell you so much about your family, and sometimes there's some hidden gold in there that you're just not finding in your newspaper searches. So, how do you do a better newspaper search so that you can find the information that you're looking for on your family? Today, I'm going to talk all about some really important tips for searching newspapers thoroughly, as well as really kind of other things as well. Some of these tips apply to kind of any types of searches, whether they be Google or on any other type of genealogy platform. I do have a handout for this video. It includes a bunch of links to newspaper sites that you may not know about, as well as important newspaper sites for every state in the United States. It also includes some of the information that we're talking about in this video, as well as some additional information that I didn't have a chance to cover. So that is either available on my Etsy page, and there's a link in the video description below, or you can join Amy's crew and get that for free. Hey, I just wanted to shout out to those of you who are part of Amy's crew or are supporting the channel. Thank you so very much. I greatly appreciate it. It helps give me a shot in the arm and it helps me produce these videos. So thank you, thank you. So let me talk for just a minute about why newspapers can be so informative. Here I found a newspaper article about my great-grandfather, and I found out that he had been married previously, but I had no idea about it at all. And then I find when he had lived in Seattle, I found an article about George C. Stevenson, who is my grandfather, and he got busted. This was part of their divorce papers, but it was written up in the newspaper that he would kind of tease his wife about her age, that she was quite a bit older than he was. I ended up doing the research and finding out that she was considerably older than he was. So I've got this little kind of villain in my family, which is, I think, actually kind of fun. And in all honesty, it's probably not the whole story, right? But anyway, this all of a sudden sent me on to other records. So it's really important to do the best that you can to do newspaper research, because it can clue you into things like this one did for me, or it can just fill up the background on the people that you're researching. It can give you details about their lives. Did they win at the state fair? Did they have a fun anniversary party, and what kind of gifts they were given, and things like that. Now, a couple of warnings though. Remember that newspaper articles were written on a deadline, and sometimes the information that was provided to the newspaper reporter or to the newspaper itself was not accurate. And so don't always take it as the gospel truth, because it may not be. There may be some errors in the newspaper. Names were frequently spelled incorrectly. So that's part of the searching technique. You need to be a little fluid in your searches. That applies as well to locations. For instance, a lot of times a marriage announcement would be published in the bride's or groom's hometown, even though they may not have lived there anymore if the family had lived there for some time, because everybody in the community wanted to hear about something like that. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is looking for other family members as well. Once I had the name of A. Elizabeth Stevenson, I could do some additional searches. And when I did so, I found that their divorce was granted. Here's another article that is kind of sad about my great-grandfather being divorced, the merry grind of the divorce factory. I never had found this article before because he's only listed in there as George C. But once I had her name from the other article, then I was able to find this one. So make sure you look at other children and aunts and uncles, and you want to be just searching the whole family, because you may find some records that you're maybe not expecting to find. Another thing to really remember is that women's names were frequently not included in newspaper articles, and so women sometimes are harder to find. So when you're searching for information about a woman, like maybe her obituary, you want to be looking for Mrs. and then maybe her husband's initials and then her husband's surname, her married name. Or you want to be looking for maybe Mrs. his name, and so, or maybe just Mrs. and then her married name, her married surname. So you want to try a bunch of different options there. Now, as far as obituaries go, a lot of times there was more than one. You might have had a death notice, you may have had a full-on obituary, or you may have had a couple of obituaries. And keep in mind that Sunday papers often were the best paper to find a photograph with the obituary. And sometimes that may be the only photograph you have. Now here is another example of an obituary where there's not a photograph, but this helped me know that this was actually the person that I was looking for, because if you see the little handprint here, or the little finger pointing, it noted that F.M. Cheney died in Bayou Chicot, that's how you say it, Louisiana, but it noted Texas papers, please copy. This was actually in a Louisiana paper, but it noted that Texas papers should please copy this article because there were family in Texas that would want to know about it. Now, sometimes you're going to see that as communicated or COM. Communicated or COM means that this information had been communicated from another paper. Another abbreviation that frequently trips people up is ultimo or ULT. And what that meant was it was the previous month. So here you'll see a newspaper where we have that ULT utilized. And it's noting that at Portsmouth, on the 25th ULT, the Andromeda and another ship had arrived, and this paper was published on the 2nd of November, 1800. So what that means is on the 25th of October, 1800 is when those ships arrived. So don't let that one confuse you. Let's talk a little bit more about search hints. Sometimes when you're searching, there are some different little tricks that you can use that will help you find something that maybe you're not finding. For instance, we talked about how names were frequently misspelled. So if you're hung up on a particular spelling of a name, you may not be finding a newspaper article about a family member that could be really valuable to you. If you don't know anything about wildcards and Boolean operators, it's something that you need to really take advantage of. So what do those mean? A question mark replaces a single letter, but only a single letter. It won't replace two. In Stevenson, sometimes it was spelled Stevenson, or sometimes Stevensen. I would write Stevens question mark N, and then that way any other letter there would work. Star indicates multiple letters. And so that can be really helpful. For instance, I'll use my Stevenson as an example again. Many times Stevenson was spelled Stephenson. And so I could do an STE star SON or S question mark N, and then that allows me to put in both of those little tricks there, okay? The other thing to keep in mind is when you put quotations around something, you're looking for that exact phrase. You don't want anything else in between it, which is sometimes really helpful. There's a couple of phrases when you put in capitals that are really important as well. For instance, if you put John Smith or Smith John, it will look for either of those terms. Or you could put John Smith, not Smith John, and then that would mean you wouldn't be looking for the other. And then and means that both of those things need to be in there. They don't have to be next to one another like they would if you use the quotations, but they both have to be in there in order for you to search for them. So here I use these wildcards, and you see that I have a Stevenson that was found. I did STE star ENS question mark N. So I found Stevenson, or here I have Stevenson with the PH. Now on some of the sites, they allow you to use an advanced search, which sometimes takes care of some of these things for you. At Roots Tech 2023, I had an opportunity to go to a fantastic presentation by Devon Lee of Family History Fanatics. They have a YouTube channel as well. And it's great, but she did a really great presentation about this. And she mentioned a couple of things that I hadn't thought of before in my newspaper searches, and I wanted to share those with you. She suggested you search with the surname and then the word visited, because a lot of times these older papers, they were kind of the Facebook of the day. They would write in, so-and-so visited so-and-so, or, and that was big news in this community. Another thing that you can search for is surname and then their occupation, or surname and an event like graduation, marriage, things like that. Surname and property place, and maybe words like parcel, deed, transfer. That can help you find when maybe they sold or bought some property. Another thing that I frequently find in older papers is surname and then the word mail or letters or postal. Newspapers would point when somebody had mail at the post office because it wasn't delivered to your house, it was delivered to the local post office, and the newspaper would let them know that they had a letter waiting for them there. Or if you think that your ancestor may have kind of had something happening with the law, you want to be using those crime terms like surname and arrested, stabbed, charged, murdered, sentenced, convicted, jailed, things like that. So those are all other ways that you can search for your family. Sometimes when we get so wrapped up on a first name, that kind of limits us. So that surname search kind of backs us back out, particularly when we can focus on a particular community and we can look at some other things. But if you just type in the surname, it can be too much. It can be more than you want. So these other search terms can be really helpful. One of the final things that I really wanted to talk to you about is the quality of the newspapers. Now, the way we find information, the way these searches work in the newspapers is they're using OCR, optical character recognition. And what that does is it's a computer program and it will look through the page of text and then it will find the different things that you want. Like when I did this search for ULT, it's highlighting every time it's finding the words ULT. And so your searches are only as good as the optical character recognition. And that's sometimes why those wildcards are really important, because maybe the newspaper just isn't seeing a clear picture. Newspapers can be smudged, or sometimes they can be kind of broken up. Like this paper is a really good example. The text wasn't printed really clearly. So some of these words are probably not being recognized properly. So what are some of the characters that are frequently confused with optical character recognition? Capital B's, capital H's, capital R's, and the number 8 can all be easily confused with one another. So when you're doing your search, you might want to substitute either a question mark there, or you might want to type in those other words and spell something really crazy, but give yourself the opportunity to find something with some of those other options. Capital D, capital G, and a 0, or a capital O, or a 6. Those can easily be confused. A lowercase b and a lowercase h are frequently very similar. A lowercase c and a lowercase e and a lowercase o are also words that frequently can be confused. On the handout that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I've included other possible characters that have been confused with the optical character recognition. So that handout will hopefully help you with that as well, give you some other thoughts on things that may be getting messed up. So I hope this has been really helpful to you. I hope that all of these different tricks for looking at newspapers will help you find your family in newspapers that maybe you missed. Again, I advocate looking at newspapers. They will give you a wealth of information about your family and tell you some of those little details that maybe you didn't know that are really interesting about your family. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. Then you'll be informed about when I release a video. And give this video a like if it's been of help to you. Thanks so much. Have a great day.